They called her unsinkable, a monument of steel and pride. But in the freezing hours of April 15, 1912, the ocean reminded humanity of a truth older than any empire. Nature doesn't negotiate. The Titanic slipped beneath black waves, taking with it the belief that progress and wealth could outsmart chance. On board were the titans of a gilded age, men whose signatures could shift markets, whose names could bend the will of governments. Yet that night, all the gold in their vaults was as useless as the ice they struck. The Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a mirror, a reflection of an era intoxicated by its own success, certain that technology and money had conquered uncertainty. But when iron met iceberg, the illusion shattered. Fortune couldn't buy a lifeboat, influence couldn't rewrite physics. And that's where the real story begins, not with an iceberg, but with the collapse of a mindset. Because the Titanic wasn't just a maritime tragedy, it was the sinking of an idea. That wealth means safety, that progress means control. Before we go deeper into the lives that went down with it, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? Because this story isn't just history, it's a lesson that echoes in our world, every time we mistake comfort for security. Among the glittering names aboard the Titanic were men who embodied the spirit of a world intoxicated with prosperity. They weren't villains, they were believers. Believers in the system they'd built, the wealth they'd inherited, the notion that power was permanent. But the Atlantic has no respect for balance sheets. Take the real estate magnate whose empire sprawled across New York, a man accustomed to command, to deference, to control. As the ship tilted, he helped his young wife into a lifeboat and stepped back into the cold. No protest, no plea, just quiet acceptance. A stoic end, the recognition that when fate arrives, resistance is vanity. He died not as a financier, but as a man stripped to his essence. Another heir to a mining fortune, dressed in his finest as the ship sank, an act that seemed absurd to some but noble to others. To him, dignity was the last currency that held value. He faced death with poise, proving that wealth cannot buy peace, but character can. And then there was the merchant king who built one of the world's great department stores. Offered safety, he refused to leave his wife. In a single gesture, he reminded the world that devotion outlasts fortune. Their deaths were not just personal tragedies, they were the punctuation mark on an era. The Titanic didn't just claim lives, it exposed illusions. When the ocean closed over the Titanic, it swallowed not only lives but entire financial dynasties. Behind the headlines of heroism and heartbreak was a quieter upheaval, the instant reallocation of vast empires of money. Fortunes that had taken generations to build were transferred in hours, rewritten by fate and inheritance law. One empire fractured overnight, the patriarch gone, his wealth passed to an unborn son who would never meet him. The widow became a reluctant symbol of modern womanhood, rich beyond measure, yet haunted by public scrutiny and loss. Across the Atlantic, boardrooms shifted, trusts were restructured, and lawyers scrambled to interpret wills written for a world that believed tomorrow was guaranteed. The mining fortune, once directed by a reckless heir, fell under stricter control, its excesses curbed by necessity. In another family, grief became architecture, a mother funding a grand library in memory of the son she lost to the sea. From tragedy rose monuments that outlived the men who financed them. But this redistribution wasn't compassion, it was consequence. It showed how wealth, like water, never disappears. It simply changes form, flowing to new hands, reshaping the landscape of power. And beneath it all lingered an unsettling truth. Even empires built on industry and intellect could drown in a single night. More than a century later, the ocean has changed little, but our arrogance has only grown. The Titanic was sold as unsinkable. Today, markets, corporations, and currencies wear the same label. Each generation believes it has mastered risk, engineered safety, conquered uncertainty. But history whispers otherwise. In 2008, investors were told housing prices could never fall. In 2021, digital prophets swore that cryptocurrency had rewritten the laws of finance. In both cases, the ships were grand, the confidence absolute, and yet the outcome was the same: impact, panic, dissent. Every crash begins as a triumph of belief over reality. Stoicism teaches that control is an illusion, that we possess only our actions, not their outcomes. The passengers of the Titanic learned that truth in hours. Modern economies learn it in cycles. The iceberg today isn't made of ice. It's built from debt, greed, and denial. We still race forward at full speed, trusting algorithms instead of captains, profit instead of prudence. But every system, no matter how complex, meets its limit. The sea finds the weakness, whether it's steel or speculation, and when that moment comes, money again proves powerless to buy time. Before we dive into this, drop a comment and tell me what you think our modern Titanic looks like. The Titanic's wreck rests 2 miles below the surface, a silent museum of ambition, beauty, and human error. But what endures is not the ship itself. It's the message it carries for every age that follows. No fortune, no innovation, no empire is immune to collapse. And yet, from that truth comes power. The Stoic kind of power that doesn't depend on circumstance. Marcus Aurelius wrote that wealth is neither good nor bad. Only the use of it determines its worth. The men aboard the Titanic lived in pursuit of permanence, but Stoicism teaches there is no such thing. What we control is our response, composure in chaos, integrity in loss, courage when the illusion of safety dissolves. Those who faced death with calm did not lose everything. They kept the one possession that fortune cannot touch, their character. In the world we live in, obsessed with growth, leverage, and limitless expansion, the iceberg is never far. Crises will come, markets will fall, comfort will vanish. The Stoic's task is not to predict disaster, but to remain steady when it arrives. Real wealth is not measured in digits or estates, but in discipline, wisdom, and resilience. So remember, money can buy luxury, but not certainty. It can delay consequences, but never erase them. The unsinkable ship is always a myth. If this gave you a new lens on history and wealth, hit subscribe, and let's keep learning from the echoes of the past before we repeat them.